Welcome, everybody. This is Councilman Britt Moore calling to order our special called meeting for Thursday, May 18th, here at the City Council chambers. With me today is Councilman Michael Holmes, Councilman Chris Williams, Victor Jones, and Cyril Jefferson. We think some others will be coming in soon, but for the sake of time, we're going to move right in. We have several agenda items that pertain to our budget, and then we'll ask to go into a closed session for attorney-client privilege. So we will begin with item 2023-236, and I'll recognize Melody Burnett, the president of Visit High Point, for a presentation of the budget for Visit High Point.
Thank you and good afternoon. I'm so pleased to present to you our budget for fiscal year 23-24. Before we dive into next fiscal year's proposed budget, I do want to give you an update on some amended budget items in the fiscal year that we're in right now for 22-23. I know that some of you all may have heard this presentation yesterday at my board meeting, but want to give you an update that occupancy tax receipts are coming in very well. If you were paying attention to some of the governor's announcements during National Travel and Tourism Week, North Carolina as a whole has surpassed 2019 numbers by 15%, and those numbers are translating here in High Point accordingly. If you look at the history of our occupancy tax, you'll see that I've been a really bad budgeter in the last 2 years because we recovered from 0 to 100 in no time. So if you look at 2001 and 2009, those were our two economic downturns that affected travel and tourism, one being the September 11th attacks, the other one being the housing market crisis. It was a steady recovery. We didn't have steady recovery right after the pandemic. So we went from $800,000 of receipts to 1.7 just in last year, and it continues to grow and has not plateaued yet. So saying that, we have amended some budget numbers. As of our board meeting of yesterday, staff got together with our finance committee and made some adjustments. Number one, we're going to bump that number from 1.8 million to a little over 2.148, and which will be a surplus of about 348,000. Our finance committee did make some recommendations that we had approved yesterday on what we're going to do with that surplus. Number one, we're anticipating a move of our visitor center and our operations by the end of the year, so some of that cost can be absorbed through this fiscal year. Our admin line item went down a little bit because we did not make a hire for this year, so we adjusted that accordingly, and then some minor adjustments in tourism promotion and direct group booking. The bulk of that surplus will be distributed through an impromptu grant cycle that we're going to introduce very, very soon. It'll either be tomorrow or Monday. There'll be 4 pots of opportunity through that grant cycle, up to $250,000. We are focusing on tourism events, tourism strategic planning, sports tourism, and of course the autism certification programming. As we announced last week, we want others to join us in our good work in becoming the second certified autism destination on the East Coast and in the nation. We also want to make some allocations, $50,000 to our Drive High Point Foundation. That's our 501c3 that also makes very impactful grants that coincide with our master plan, our 10-year long-range master plan. And then we know that City Council has just approved our branding initiative for the city as a whole. We anticipate that there'll be some implementation that'll take place within phase 1. We don't know what that looks like yet, but we wanted to earmark some funds in order to have a strategic partnership with the city of High Point on that.
Wonderful news.
What was that?
Wonderful news.
Wonderful news? Okay, well that little bit hopefully helps. Diving into our next year's budget, we're anticipating a 3% increase because quite honestly, it's got to plateau at some point. We're already seeing a little bit of decrease in our short-term home rental rates, and the hotel rates are plateauing just a little bit. So we think that we'll still have a forward trajectory. It just won't be as fast, and of course we can make adjustments accordingly if need be. We would like to hire that tourism development manager that we had in our budget last year. We have pretty much a brand-new staff. We only have 2 senior staff members, so we had to make some adjustments within this fiscal year. Of course, the operational expenses will increase at about 39%. The bulk of that will be the cost of our move, and then we'll have to make some adjustments accordingly with IT, telephone, janitorial, et cetera. We even have some enhanced travel for some of our senior staff. We've got 2 trips that we're planning in Dallas and Little Rock in conjunction with Destinations International and some certifications that we're going after. That'll take probably about a good 3 years to do that. Our direct booking expense is going to increase by about 6%. Those items include our event booking incentives, which are flat. Logo items, of course, include service giveaways, any kind of special servicings that we have to do with any direct group marketing. Our partnership with the Market Authority and High Point by Design on B2B designer initiatives. The bulk of our budget goes into direct tourism, which is about 65% increase. We're going to enhance some of our vendor contracts. Our admin line items about 28% of our budget, so we really rely heavily on those vendor contracts to help support our efforts and our capacity. We've got a strategic ask to a local partner to help with social media. And then in terms of our media, we always like to look at it as earned media, paid media, and owned media. So, of course, we have some partners that help us with our promotions, press releases and such. And then, of course, we have someone that helps with marketing, photography, B-roll, et cetera. And then everything else is in-house, such as events, calendar, newsletter, our online presence, et cetera. And then, of course, in terms of our tourism promotion, lots of advertising. Outside of our market area is 90 miles and beyond. We want that to be opportunity where they would have to stay the night, and that, of course, would increase our economic impact. But, of course, there's from time to time opportunity with Business North Carolina. Anytime they write a Triad article, we want to make sure that we're ready with some curated content there. Lots of advertising that would gear towards our leisure market, being furniture shopping, family-friendly, visiting friends and family, and, of course, the autism travel as well. Everything else is pretty standard. If you are a fan of the PBS channel and you are paying attention to the Side-by-Side series with Dr. Quabain, you may have noticed that we have some strategic High Point marketing that's in between that programming as well. Of course, our printed collateral includes our destination guide. We update that. We haven't updated it in 2 years. It'll be updated within the next month. You should see that printed. And then, of course, we'll have to do that again for next year just to stay fresh and relevant. We have restaurant tent cards. We have about 20 partners right now that are allowing us to put tent cards at the tabletops to promote our events calendar and our text platform here in High Point just to stay connected. Our home furnishings and design guide is our signature collateral piece. That has 58 furniture stores and even 100 within the greater vicinity. And of course, our autism travel guide is hot off the press, and we introduced that as of last week. Our VIP tour, we're getting more and more demand for that, so we're going to have 3 of those for next year. We've also planned 1 FAM tour for HR professionals, and that's in partnership with High Point Veterans Initiative. We are going to do a FAM tour with travel writers in the middle of June for this fiscal year, and plan another one for the next fiscal year as well, focusing on friendly family travel and autism travel as well. And then, of course, the trade shows that we're participating in right now are relevant for designers and furniture shopping on the consumer platform. We tried the Greensboro Ideal Living Home Show as well as the one in Charlotte. Both of those were very fruitful, and we're going to try out Raleigh in September. Then, of course, in events promotion and development, I'm hoping that you all have had some relationships with our new hire, Dana East, as of July. We did not give her a budget. However, we put one together for next fiscal year. And we would like to focus on several areas. Number one being a winter experience in our downtown. We've talked about it. We think we know exactly what we need to do. Of course, we'd like to keep an interactive exhibit for public art, something fresh and new to look forward to, especially at the beginning of our High Point Rocker season. We just did that with Rosso and last year with Impulse, and we had some really great touch points and key performance indicators that were unveiled yesterday at our board meeting. We had 391,000 touch points on the ROSO exhibit when those sensors were activated, so that was some really great usage and exposure for that downtown. The bulk of that expense will be to help with our Coltrane Festival capacity. We really want to focus on that VIP experience, maybe even some experiences right off the lake on our boat, and of course some extra branding at the airport and downtown as well. And then, of course, our budget breakdown looks like this. About 29% in admin, operations is 18%, and marketing and programs at 53%. According to Destinations International, they say that that allocation should be no more than 40% in admin and around 12 and 15 around operations and about 48% in marketing, so we feel really comfortable with those allocation levels. At this point, I'd just like to ask if you have any questions of me. I'd be glad to entertain those.
Mel, do you mind if we see your org chart just one more time?
Oh, sure. Let's see. Can you see that? Okay.
Yes, ma'am. And you were saying that you did some increases here, and that early on you only had, I think, I don't want to misquote you, you said you only had like 2 senior personnel at the time. And
Yeah, so our 2 senior staff includes myself and our VP of branding. We had our business development manager of 7 years leave us, and so our staff is relatively new as of 2 years or less. So we were doing a little bit of restructuring. It's working well. Our business development manager, of course, was in charge of our concierge program. We do have a replacement for that person, and we just promoted from within. She's doing a great job in the consumer arena with that, and so we're just getting her acclimated now on the designer portion.
yeah, I want to echo kind of some of what was mentioned yesterday in you all's board meeting, how much, one, I appreciate all the approach that Visit High Point takes to doing this work. It's great to see the occupancy tax numbers rising up, but also great to hear that, you know, in you all's discussions, you are considering how that may at some point level off. But to echo what was said yesterday, the adjustment you all made with the director of events and Dana East and the great work that she's doing, you just hear consistently throughout the community how that's been a real value add when people are looking to do events. And I'll mention it here for the dais too, mostly because we hear now over and over again that folks are looking to do events. And I don't know about you all, but when someone comes to me and they're asking questions, hey, can the city sponsor this? Or can we do this? Can you help? How do we do that? A lot of times I'm trying to think about the event. I'm like, maybe you need to call the Visit High Point team and see if they can help you all with that. And we talked about maybe there's potential in offering some training to our community a little bit more around events. And just thinking about some of those best practices that we're seeing out of that. Because, I mean, it's been a real value add. Everything happening in our downtown, everything from Coltrane, stuff on Washington Street, Juneteenth, things of that nature. It's been a real value add, and just appreciate the work y'all are doing.
I appreciate that. We see Dana's skill sets as a real value as well. I know that she speaks highly working with the City of High Point team. I know that those relationships are really strong. And that tourism development manager, we would like for that person to work really closely with Dana, really working on the experiencing piece. We're talking right now about trolley tours, linking districts, more VIP tours and FAM tours, more public art. Those interactive exhibits are really experience-based, and we don't want Dana's job description to be watered down with that. We really think that we now have that demand where we could pull the trigger on a new staff person to handle that. All right.
Anybody else? All righty.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate it, Melanie. Thank you. Next item on our agenda is 2023-239. This is our presentation from Forward High Point, and I'll recognize the president of Forward High Point, Rebecca McGee.
Thank you, Council. Thank you for having me. My presentation is going to be a lot more brief than Melody's and very short. So presenting to you the 2023-2024 proposed budget for us. We have approved this as an executive committee with the knowledge that we also might tweak this a little bit moving forward. But just wanted to tell you a little bit about what we've been doing and what we plan to do in the future. Of course, these are pulled directly from Forward High Point's current information and website. That we are founded in 2016 and we follow the North Carolina Main Street program. We really had about one sole mission for about the last 6 years, even saying, we follow the Main Street program, and I came into this, and we're stepping into a strategic plan right now to kind of step back and say, is this what we're doing? What are we doing moving forward? And we've been going through that process now. Whoops. So as you can see, at the moment, we are pretty much 100% city and county funded. That is the amount, $250,000 from the city and $40,000 from the county. Those are our incomes at the moment. And you can see staff expenses mainly remain the same. The only difference in our staff line items is we did increase that slightly because of Melissa leaving and the current market, that to recruit someone with the skill set that we needed to increase the pay from what Melissa was receiving. And our operational expenses have basically stayed the same this year and will plan to be for the next year. The really big change in what we're doing, and I'm going to move to this slide here, is the last item before the total program expenses. We spent, or we had budgeted about $60,000 for our strategic plan this year. We have not actually completely spent all that. However, we're taking the funds from that. We did, you can see, go into our savings a bit for the strategic plan, but we have about $39,000 left over that we don't have an item for at the moment. But we'd like to take those once we finish our strategic plan and kind of allocate those towards specific projects in the downtown and uptown area. And that being said, one of the things that I get asked all the time is, where are we in the strategic plan? What are people saying? And I can't exactly give you a 100% concrete answer right now, but I'm hearing common themes. And so what I did is put together a survey that went just to vested partners and just to the merchants and business owners downtown. It did not go out to the full community. This is not part of the strategic plan. This was actually just something I did internally and said, if you had a $40,000 budget, what would you like to see in downtown? And I apologize for the abbreviation, but downtown marketing is the #1 thing that everybody says. Now, we do social media, and there's a lot of partners that also play in that, but there is a desire for downtown combined social media, promoting more than just one business here, one business there, and that comes into what Melody does, but really specifically also just focusing on the core. You can see the answers kind of vary as what people want. Public art installations, a big request. You see the street furniture, meaning benches, planters, trees, and we understand that this is a lot of what the city is already doing. We do have to have their partnership in this, but this is also giving you an idea of the things that we could assist in along the ways if the city had a plan and said, hey, we want to do this, we'll let Forward High Point use that budget money to pay for a portion of it. And those items, funds for a downtown grant is the light blue one. I know it cut off and you can't tell what that is, but I have that in writing. Assist the city in the creation of a public park. Yes.
Forgive me, what does downtown grant constitute? Like what would that end up being?
So a lot of Main Street programs or a lot of downtown organizations have grants that are specific to that area, either in property development or in business development. The sky's the limit on what you want to do with that. I've seen it done many, many different ways. I've managed 2 different ways to do it. A lot of the times they're not geared toward job investment because those small business owners don't have 25 to 40 full-time employees. So they're geared often a lot more times toward either a specific type of business you're targeting. Say you want more restaurants downtown, then you tailor that to what they may need, or it's developed to work on the property. So if the property is increased, what they're spending on the actual hard items, tangible items, can then be reimbursed. So there is actually, that's one of the items. I then gave everybody, once they clicked on these items, a fill in the blank of what you'd like to see, and a downtown grant was one of those things. The sky's the limit on that. They really didn't specify, and I've seen it done 100 different ways. So that's also something that I've kind of proposed as an idea to our board and executive committee. is something I think would be extremely valuable in downtown, because if you really want a specific type of business, or if you want to improve your property values with trying to incentivize those businesses, it's a really good way to do it. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you so much.
The orange one is assist the city in the creation of a public green space. Again, I apologize, that cut that off. Additional events, we already are partnering with the Visitor Center to do some of events downtown. Downtown combined marketing, including more print ads, more television ads. I know, again, that didn't print. And then the creation of a historic district downtown, which that would actually be very difficult in downtown High Point, because not a lot of the original history is still there. And the project opportunity funds. These are example pictures. They came from nowhere specific. It's, downtown bike rides. You've got bike racks. I did it again. The creation of a public green space. You have an art installation that also doubles as a seating space in downtown. You have additional marketing, whether that's just a retail map of the areas in uptown and downtown. And then, of course, I included one we're already we're doing Social Saturday with Melody, and I'd like to take some of those funds. Visit High Point is taking the brunt of that financial responsibility for Social Saturdays, but as that grow, I would like that to be a joint partnership. So those are kind of the ideas for the project funds. I can't say what we're going to use them for, but I'd love to have the community involved and say what they would like to use them for. And that is the end of our budget presentation. Any questions for me?
How would you collect that voice of the city? Like, how would a citizen get a project idea to Forward High Point? What would be the process of doing that?
So this,
Have that worked out?
No, the survey actually just went out to the people who are vested in downtown, and I'm still building a list of all the property owners, the merchants, trying to keep that updated. I've had a lot of help with some members from the city, as well as Visit High Point, as well as Elizabeth, who used to run Uptown. So right now, that survey just went out to the people who would be utilizing that space or have a space next door. We are holding what I call merchant meetings. That's just an abbreviation. That's open to community partners, business owners. It's open to property owners, but I call them merchant meetings. Merchant meetings once a month, and it's invited everybody in Uptown and downtown to kind of share ideas, talk about what we're doing, and we've had a really great attendance. Our first one was our highest. We had 52 people that came to this meeting, and I move them around every month. The last one, I think we had about 39 or 40. And it's a different crowd every time. So those are two opportunities where people are welcome to come in. And I say it's open to the public. We do have a lady that's involved with the local historic district that comes as well, and she just wants to stay involved. So hope to include more people as we go along.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, Rebecca, we appreciate
Thank
you
you.
coming out. Thank you. Our next item, 2023-238, is the budget for our market authority, and I'll recognize Ms. Tammy Nagel.
Thanks, Councilman Moore, and thank you to the rest of the council for inviting us here to talk about something that's really important to all of us as a community and important for our market going forward, is to look at this, our 23-24 budget. I started this presentation just to put together some of our focus areas. As we restructured, when I took the president's role, we've really been concentrating in 4 areas, and you'll see those concentrations as we go through the budget. Really cultivating new buyer targets, ensuring a frictionless guest experience, a long-range technology plan that is very customer-focused, and nourishing the next generation of home furnishings professionals. All of these are things that you would expect to see on our list, except maybe the last one. And just to talk about that a few minutes, because I do feel like our team is working very hard in this area. It occurs to us in these days and times that we represent an industry. We are a trade show at the end of the day, and we are only as healthy as the industry we represent. And if that industry is not growing, if that industry is not changing, then we are not as a trade show, and therefore as a city. And so we've been working hard at looking at what that next generation is. This is not only students, this is making sure that we have a diverse group of people interested in coming into this industry, talking about what this looks like from a design, from a manufacturing standpoint. And so you're going to see some of those things from us as we move forward. We have recently formed a group called the Diversity Advocacy Alliance that is a group of designers that are working hard looking at this very thing. And so for us, this has been an important addition to what we do and something you may not have seen in our list of focus areas in the past. I also gave each of you what we are calling the lookbook. I do find frequently that people don't know what the Market Authority does. We're confused frequently with buildings, or Chris, your organization, you all find yourself explaining that as much as we do, I think. But we just felt like it was important to put this together to talk a little bit about what we do. And on that first page, you'll find those areas of focus because we do think that's important. Oh. Okay, Ryan, what did I do wrong? I'm just going to go that direction. How's that? There we go. So just to call out a little bit of what you're seeing in the budget that we sent you all, you see 22-23 budget and then 23-24. So I just wanted to point out a few things that kind of how this is progressing. Our 22-23 budget, we had some additions, much as Melody talked about, and those kind of came in three areas. One, an additional COVID allocation that was through ARPA funds. It was basically how the funds were distributed to us. We had $100,000 more dollars come to us in this fiscal year than was originally planned. That will be less in the next year, but so that was one reason that forecasted higher. You'll hear similarly for me that occupancy tax certainly made the difference for us. We got an additional $90,000 in that bucket. Registration fees, also several years ago, we added a fee to industry passes as well as anyone who registered on site. We were really hoping that everybody would get the picture and pre-register and we wouldn't have to charge them on site. That didn't happen. They still came and they still paid. So those fees were a little bit higher than we anticipated. So you will see our forecast there being a little bit higher than the budget from 22-23. But as we look at 23-24, we were conservative in putting that number together because we don't yet know what our request will bear from the state of North Carolina. And so we have asked for an additional $500,000 that will take the place of those ARPA funds that we have received in the past. We would love to see those as a part of our recurring allocation, but we don't have any indication yet if we did come through the House budget with those. They were reduced a little in the Senate budget, but until then, we're going to basically leave those flat. Just looking at our revenue, I always think it's important to look at this in terms of what we do. We think we are the quintessential public-private partnership. 22% of our dollars come from local funds. That's the city, that's the county, and that's those occupancy tax dollars. 48% from the state of North Carolina and 31% from the industry. That's the showroom tax that those folks pay. It's also sponsorship and those registration fees. Expenses, much of what you would expect as we looked at the income, these are tracking very similarly, making sure that we're staying within those bounds. Just a slight increase there in the 23-24 budget, in hopes if we are successful at getting those additional dollars from the state of North Carolina, we'll forecast that up and spend accordingly as we did in 22-23. And then lastly, just sort of breaking those down for you all to see the major pots where we're spending dollars. Administration is just what you would expect there in terms of to keep our office running and our organization, it's insurance and those sorts of things. Transportation is that transportation system that we run twice a year along with parking. Registration, we mail about 150,000 badges a market, and that is important to us to make sure that operation continues. You will see some slight adjustments in these as we go to 23, 24, and registration is one of those to call out. Through the shifting of those key focus areas, this has been an area that we have shifted. A lot of that technology that I discussed in the beginning is in that. That's where our database is housed, and a lot of work we're doing there. Also kind of shifting some focus to making sure we're targeting those right buyers and getting them registered. Marketing, consequently, has come down a little bit as we shift those dollars into registration. And guest services being all the things that you see on site that make that frictionless guest experience, and making sure the folks that are coming here are still coming. We are looking at about our salaries are about 16% of our total budget, and the highlights of some of the increases that you've seen. Realignment of staff and resources, which is that change between marketing and registration. We did increase the pay rate of the over 200 temporary staff people that we hired during market. We have a 93% retention rate in our temporary staff. So we work hard to make sure those folks enjoy coming to work at Market every day, and part of that is making sure that they're fairly compensated. We're also investing in our data, thereby making our marketing a lot smarter, and we hope that that continues to pay dividends as we see new and different faces on the streets of High Point. And then right-size our scale. This is something that I've felt important for years, that this is a big market. High Point is the largest home furnishing show in the world, not only by how many folks who come here, also in geography. And so I feel like for years what we've done, one of our contractors likened it to, he said, you can't make signs on an 8.5 by 11 page. You have to make 16-foot totems, and that's what you see around town. It's much like the city as we go through this branding opportunity, and we have just gone through that as well, is that it has to be big. Our entertainment has to be big. Our keynotes have to be big. We don't have to do 10 of them, but they need to be as big as our market. And so that's been important to us, is how we approach that. So you'll continue to see big things coming out of our organization, maybe not as many, but hopefully more impactful. And we think you'll see that as you look through the budget numbers. Any questions for me?
Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to congratulate you. I mean, I know most people are struggling to retain, 50% of their staff and their full-time staff, and you're hitting 93% on temporaries. Kudos, man.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's impressive.
Yeah, we've worked hard. We've even put in an incentive for the temporary staff to help us find new temporary staff. So we'll give you $100.
Nice.
If you bring a new staff member and you complete your work schedule and so do they, then you get $100. And so we had one temporary staff person who brought in so many new people that she was paid more with the incentive than she was for what the job she did at Market. But what better way to find good people than the people who know what it is to work for us? And so we've really found some success in that. And then making sure that they're treated well when they're there, so that they will go recruit friends and family to come and work with us.
Well done.
Yeah.
If it's okay, Mr. Chairman, thank you for that tip.
It works, Chris.
Stealing that right now. I don't know if they'll give me the budget. Well, that's crucial. So, actually, it's kind of a combo question between you and Visit High Point. A while back, I don't know if you still do this, but you used to have like the window stickies, and because we have a lot of people that visit the buildings in between markets and asking, oh, is this where I'm supposed to go buy furniture? If you are doing that, I like to get a few stacks of those and place them around, because I know, it was before COVID, we would do that all the time. They would come up and we just give them that and they would love it and then head to State Street. So if you are still doing that, and if that's available, I would like to do that again.
We can get you some more, and the Market Authority has always been very forthcoming in letting us know their showroom meetings to make that pitch to the showroom owners to see if we can display those stickies in the
Yeah.
windows, because that is very helpful. We want to make sure to be proactive in that perception to direct them where they need to be.
And
Absolutely.
just so we're clear, these are like visitors from out of state that are looking to buy retail. And they're thinking that the buildings are retailers, but we can get them to visit High Point and they can show them like the local ones here, so.
Absolutely.
So that's big, and thank you.
We'll make sure we get some more of those, Chris.
All right, and I won't say the name, but are you looking to try to get the music group that didn't show this past week back? Just curious.
Chris, I wish, man, I was just crushed when In Vogue canceled on us a few days before Market. Unfortunately, one of their singers had a vocal cord issue, and she's on bed rest for like 2 months. And so I don't know that they were great to work with, and I would love to be able to do that again.
You did great with the replacement, though.
We did great with the replacement, absolutely.
Well, the replacement was Dougie Fresh,
Yes,
so
he
it was really great, actually.
Yeah, it was really great. He did an awesome job, but Joe Williams does a great job for us, and being able to, I mean, I think it was 4 days that's how much notice Joe had. So he pulled a rabbit out of a hat, and it was a great night. But to your point, Councilman, making sure that we have, some recognizable names out there, I think you'll be happy when we talk about October. So.
Okay.
I had a follow-up. This market, Councilman Moore, this is the first market, I believe, in my adult life that I've been out of town.
I was going to say, I don't think I saw you, Councilman.
I couldn't be here, but as we've been trying this revitalization, we've got some things open, what kind of feedback did any of you ladies get concerning any of the new amenities? Are people, some of them recognizing the Stock and Grain and
Absolutely.
the Plank Street and?
Absolutely. And we've worked hard in making sure people know about all the great things happening in our city. And you know what's interesting is to talk to market guests, and they will report that they feel the difference. They will say, there's a lot going on here. And making sure that we keep shuttle stops near Stock and Grain. We did our information booth training at Stock and Grain this time. So all my information staff sat there for 4 hours in the morning doing the Saturday before. They hosted us for training because I wanted, when someone walked up to a booth and said, where do I find something to eat? That information staff would remember sitting there that morning. So anything we can do to make sure that we're continuing to do that. Melody put together a fantastic little card that we gave out. We worked closely with Visit High Point to make sure we're getting that information out. And it was great because it was like a few steps, and like it's all in how you market it for these folks. You want them to feel like it's close. And so what Mel's team put together was great. But absolutely, we heard great things from market guests that they do see the difference in our city, and I think that's great.
Were the events still held at the Minden Hall?
Events were still, absolutely, we're still in the Showplace parking lot this time. And then we had Joanna Gaines as our keynote, and it was in the theater. We actually used every one of the 900 seats in the High Point Theater for Joanna Gaines and turned almost 100 people away.
Wow.
Great. Well, that energy is good, and we appreciate each of you ladies. I don't know where the male representation is, but y'all are doing a great job, and if you look at it from 30,000 feet, this is, we are all kind of weaving the fabric here and trying to build on the momentum and the positive energy that's happening. So, and that's going to be critical for our long-term success. So, thanks for coming out today. And
Chairman Moore, but sorry, before
Sure.
we leave, I wasn't sure you were going to open the floor back up. Just wanted to some of the questions and comments that were raised. I stopped by the food hall during market on one of those last days and spoke to some of the vendors there, and the response that they got about market, and seeing the folks come in that steady foot traffic. The coffee shop, for example, said, hey, we've not had a steady week of getting this kind of foot traffic at all since we've been here. And what was incredible was that that was one of the few local stop-and-go places that was open every single day that market was going on, for example. And then just to the point, I love the story, so I want to share it like really, really quickly. Marcus Gilchrist is a graduate of our alma mater, the very best high school in High Point. I know we all know which one that is. And he played 10 years in the NFL. And Marcus reached out to me a couple months ago, wanted to get more involved in our community. He's seen everything happening. And so we were talking one day, he was here, and I said, you know, because Market does this, and yada, yada. And he said, well, I don't really know about Market. I've never been. So I reached out to the High Point Market Authority team and said, hey, we've got someone who's from our city, lives way out, I think in Boca Raton, Florida, and said, can we get passes? Because he's never seen it. I think he needs to see it. Well, sure enough, he came in Friday through Sunday, and all throughout that entire experience, just the way he was completely surprised in a very good way at not only the quality of what you see walking in the showrooms, but just the incredible operation of seeing Market take place, the way the city comes alive through downtown, but the operations of traffic and the events and different things happening, seeing Dougie Fresh, he was like, man. And so it was an incredible experience because here he was every single time we were walking through, and he would just pause and look at me and say, this is High Point. This is the city that I grew up in, that I moved away for my professional football career, and now I'm back in the city, and I don't think I've been anywhere in the world that's been more impressive. And it gave him such a different inspiration. He's called me every week since then trying to figure out how he can get more plugged into High Point, especially seeing all the downtown revitalization stuff, because he's saying, man, we got to take advantage of this. We got to be able to push this train forward. We got to talk to all the other folks who are from High Point who have left. We got to get them to come back, get reinvested, because High Point's doing something very special. And so I love that story, because I think when you start talking about, you know, folks who have had the opportunity to travel all over the world and do incredible things, and now they're coming back to our city and seeing the great things happening in our downtown, our revitalization, stopping by Market and being blown away like that, and that triggers them wanting to be more invested. That's the kind of thing that I think is a win. It's the kind of story, Chairman Moore, I apologize for how long I took,
Nope.
but I think it's the kind of story that's powerful, and just wanted to ensure that everyone on this dais
I
knows.
appreciate you sharing that. He is quite a guy, and it's nice to hear you younger generations beating the High Point drum, because I never stopped beating it, even when everybody was dragging it in the mud. So this is a great town because it's got great people, and the amenities and all that other stuff just add to that. So that's good to hear. Thanks for sharing. Anybody else want to comment? All right. Again, thank you all for being here. At this time, we're going to look at item 2023-242, and I will recognize City Manager Tasha Logan Ford.
Thank you, Chairman Moore, members of council. The continuing with our spending plan, looking at our annual budget for 23-24. At our last budget work session, there were several questions that council members had, and the responses to those questions have been provided for members of council. But I wanted to just pause for a moment, and if there are any additional questions or follow-up once you've all had a chance to review those, then staff will be prepared to answer those. But also, as it relates to that, there were a couple of additional follow-up items that I wanted to make sure we covered today. In the review questions, one of the things that was asked of staff was for us to evaluate and provide comparison information regarding the mayor and city council compensation. In that information that was sent out, we provided a comparison looking at several jurisdictions, and we provided the salaries for the mayor and the city council. One of the items that we'll need to be able to finish the budget is for council to let us know if you all would like to entertain making a change to the current salaries and when that would be effective based on the information that staff has provided. There was also some discussion around the High Point Schools Partnership and the desire to allocate a portion of our ARPA funds to support that program. And we have that prepared for you all today. And in addition to looking at High Point Schools Partnership, we also, this is an opportunity for us to allocate the remaining of our ARPA funds until council makes some final decisions on how to fund community agencies. So for that item, I wanted to go ahead and turn the floor over to our budget manager, and he can explain that item if council would like to take action on that tonight. I don't know if we would need to formally amend the agenda to add that, if council wants to take action, or if they can just proceed with it. Since it's not specifically listed there, I'd imagine we may need to amend the agenda if you would like to add that item to vote tonight. Okay, thank you, Madam Attorney. And the final item relative to the review of the budget would be making a determination regarding the final budget meeting. We do have one more budget meeting that was scheduled for the 24th, but if we're able to resolve these issues tonight, and there aren't any additional questions, then we'll need to make a decision as to whether or not council feels that that last budget work session would be necessary before we bring the final budget to you on June 5th.
Madam Attorney, do I suspend the rules on the motion now to incorporate those things?
I think it's just, Stephen needs to make the presentation and what.
It's just an agenda item, so if he wants to suspend the rules to add that item.
Well, I'll make a motion to suspend the rules for additional item.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor? Any opposed?
Sorry, we didn't get discussion. I was going to ask a quick question.
Yeah, sure.
We're making a motion to suspend the rules for the High Point Schools partnership piece?
Where there's an item that's sitting at the dais. It would be an item for us to allocate the funds to the High Point Schools Partnership. At the last budget work session, there was some discussion about supporting that program.
Right, no, I got that. Sorry, the only reason why I hesitated like that.
Yeah.
I actually wanted to, do I need to recuse? Yeah, so can we
Okay.
actually back up a little bit? Because I thought for a second we were talking about the city council piece, and then I just realized you were talking
We're
about the
talking
High Point
about the High
Schools
Point School
partnership.
Partnership piece.
So I didn't vote just now. I was quiet.
I don't think you
I
need to
was-
recuse from the motion to suspend the rules to add to the agenda. You would need to recuse from the agenda item itself.
I get that. I don't know, do I need to recuse from both, though?
No, I think we can add the agenda item. And to be clear, so it's this remaining ARPA funding, is this the
Yes.
agenda item?
It is.
So the motion to suspend the rules to add the agenda item remaining ARPA funding, and then
Okay.
vote on that, and then recuse yourself from the topic, the actual substantive one.
So I can vote to have the agenda item added, and then recuse from the agenda item?
Or if you'd like to recuse from both, you can recuse from.
I prefer to recuse from both.
Thank you.
I make a substitute motion since that one's not complete, I guess, right? Or is that one complete?
I'm sorry, I
Is
didn't
that last
understand.
motion complete
To add the item?
to add the item?
That's the motion that's on the table right now, so I think that's fine, right?
Yeah,
Do you want to repeat your motion just for everybody? To amend the agenda to add the
add
remaining?
the ARPA, additional ARPA funding, and was there one other consideration?
Do I need to make a substitute motion to recuse him since he's asking me to recuse?
No,
I think we can, so if you're recusing yourself, is that right? You want-
I'm recusing myself from both votes, yep.
yeah.
Okay, then go ahead, I think you can just vote on that one, that's
You don't
fine.
have to vote to recuse him?
No, because if we want to, we can. It's not necessary, because he's not asking, you're not excusing him, he's recusing himself.
Okay.
So when he calls out for the vote, do I just say abstain at some point?
Just don't participate at all in the discussion or anything,
And the minutes will reflect that I did not vote on either one of those.
that he has recused himself.
Thank you.
You got the language you need in this motion? Do you have the language you need in this motion now? Okay. So, everybody ready to vote? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes. At this time,
Our budget director will present the item.
Stephen Howerlick.
Yes, good afternoon, Councilman Moore, members of the City Council. The agenda item before you does several things, so I'll kind of walk you through what we're doing. There's two actions we're requesting. The first is an allocation of the remaining American Rescue Plan Act funds for government services. If you recall to all of the past allocations for ARPA funds, we've done two things. Allocate for government services, which is meant to reduce our federal administrative burden, and then take the dollars that are freed up from that action and apply it toward projects that you have deemed to use those funds for. And so the first action is taking the remaining $5,847,426 that haven't been allocated and allocating them for government services. What this will do will allow us to complete our reporting to the U.S. Department of Treasury by the end of the current fiscal year, and in their eyes, our spending of federal ARPA dollars will be complete. The second action does three things. It assigns $150,000 toward a mentorship and enrichment coordinator position within the High Point Schools Partnership, as was discussed at last week's budget work session. It assigns $350,000 of the funds for a disparity study, and then it takes the remaining $5,347,426 and places them into a restricted account for use and determination by the mayor and city council at a later date. And so what you still have left to allocate for, their local funds, but in essence, what came through ARPA is that $5.3 million. And staff can't take those funds and apply them to anything. It has to come before this body and be approved to be allocated toward any projects. And so there'll be two motions, one for the grant project ordinance, which is the assignment of the ARPA funds, and the second one would be a budget ordinance setting up those three, the High Point Schools Partnership, the funding for the disparity study, and placing the remaining in a restricted account to be determined at a later time. Happy to answer any questions on that.
Chairman, could those be broken up? So that, because I'd vote on the disparity study and the other ones, I just can't vote on the budget ordinance for High Point Schools Partnership.
Yeah, as long as I get this written down, because I heard it all, but I don't know that I can regurgitate it all at one time. So there's two separate motions, but in the second one, there were the three items, correct? So I need to, in order to get the wording down correct, I need you to go back over. The first one is the government services ARPA piece, correct?
Yes, it'd be asking for an approval of a grant project ordinance for the use of the remaining ARPA funds for government services.
And Chairman Moore, I think that you can take that item as it's read on the agenda item, and then we can separate number 2, if you would like to do it that way.
Okay. Are you speaking of this agenda piece?
This agenda item here, think
Down
if you
under
could-
the letter, okay.
I
All
think
right,
you could
got
take
I
the
saw.
first item
Okay.
just as it's written, and then we can separate item 2.
All right. So, everybody know where we are here? I'm going to make a motion to approve the grant project ordinance amendment for the use of remaining ARPA funds for government services. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That motion passes. The next, I move to approve the budget ordinance amendment for the High Point Schools Partnership Mentor Coordinator for $150,000.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
And just for the record, that's the one that Councilman Jefferson recused himself from.
Correct. I will make a motion to approve the budget ordinance amendment for the disparity study for $350,000.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Okay. That motion passes. And I will make a motion to approve the budget ordinance amendment for the future use of $5,347,426.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
This was sitting here, and I didn't have time to read that part before we started.
Councilman Moore, I've got to be at county commissioners in about 25 minutes. So
Okay, thank you. I know schedules are tight. Thank you for being here, Councilman Jones.
Chairman Moore, the next time as it relates to council compensation, is there any direction from the board in terms of if they would like to make any adjustments as part of this budget, and when the council would like for that to become effective?
Only if you can retroactive to 2010.
I would make the argument against that, but I'll leave that alone. I think we should move forward with this as I've kind of expressed it before, that we're talking about the expanded amount of work that the council members and the future council members kind of are expected to execute versus what it was back in as far as 2014. And then the adjusted expenditures of gas and phone, et cetera, et cetera. I think we should move forward with the recommendation from staff. I was going by.
Or yeah, but
You need-
let me make sure I understand too, because I don't think anybody on this council is gonna have a problem with trying to look at this and make some adjustments. The question is timing.
Oh, okay.
Do we want, I think if I understand correctly, they're wanting to know if we want to move quickly enough to have it in this year's budget. Is that correct?
Correct.
So I'm not sure we've got the time to get all that done.
If a decision is made tonight in terms of what that amount needs to be, then we have time to put it in
No,
place.
I agree.
Okay.
I'm just not so sure that quick of a movement to try to get to a number is fair or possible. Y'all tell me if I'm wrong, if
Stephen, the figure that I'm looking at here, is that staff recommendation?
I don't believe that's
Yeah, it
the
says-
staff, are you looking at the,
Yeah, I'm looking at the table, and it's two separate tables. It's got High Point, and I guess this is the current.
yeah, there's a high point under jurisdiction and then an average, and the cities below in the second table are in that average.
Yeah, so is that the recommendation?
I wouldn't necessarily say it's a recommendation,
Okay.
but I think that could be a base starting point if you're looking at how High Point compares to the average of these other cities.
that was kind of my point.
Yeah.
I don't remember seeing this is what we recommend.
Right.
And I think it's staff's responsibility to get us the information and then we make the decisions on what we would vote on. I mean, they can certainly give us a recommendation, but do y'all feel like we got time to get them the number
Yeah.
they need?
And
Well-
Councilman Moore, if I may.
Yeah.
Under North Carolina law, the time to make an adjustment is with the adoption of the annual budget ordinance.
Correct.
Right, so I'm not sure what you have in front of you there, but related to the salary, it can only be done with the annual budget ordinance. Related to any fixed allowance, it can be done with the adoption of an annual budget ordinance, but it wouldn't take effect until the next term of office, which would be coming up. So if you want to make adjustments to either pots of those money, whether it's the salary or the fixed allowance, the time would be to do it now, and they could both be effective with that time. So
Correct.
I don't know if you have that in front of you, but I just wanted to be clear that that's why I'm assuming that the manager's asking for timing purposes to, be able to account for that.
Correct.
And Chairman Moore, I think the other point here is that today we're not voting on the actual budget. So correct me if I'm wrong, could we not give a number right now based on what this is and still have some opportunity for deliberation? For example, we've got a public hearing on the budget, and that's where we're supposed to, assuming that doesn't throw any curveballs, we kind of there have a chance to deliberate any one of those line items and could there change a line item ostensibly.
Councilmember Jefferson, the public hearing for the budget has already passed, so when the budget comes to council on the 5th, it would be in its final form for council to adopt the budget.
So we couldn't have any
Nobody's spoken
deliberations
about
on that?
You could have discussion at that night, you could have discussions that night, but typically when it comes that night, it's in its final form, and council's taking action on it.
So what does staff need? It sounds like the majority want to do something on this. From a timing standpoint, can we just tell you today that, yes, we're in favor of it, and when do you need the number? Do you need that number today?
I would imagine the number would need to be discussed in an open setting, and there was agreement and a vote from the board that this is the number we want to put in the budget.
Okay.
In order for us to be able to move forward.
Okay.
And
And they're giving us two, basically. Is it two versions or two options?
so two options, that what was provided in the response to the budget questions that was given to council, that was emailed, we gave a comparison of several jurisdictions and what the salaries is. One way to look at this, staff did not make a recommendation to the full council on this, but there are a couple different ways that you could look at this. If you wanted to take the average of all of those salaries, looking at the mayor's salary and the city council's salary, the average of all of those cities for the mayor is $26,649, and the average for council members is $20,307. That's one thing that you all could do if you chose to do that. Another thought process, if you wanted to consider that you have not done an increase to the salary since 2008, I shared that at the last meeting. Typically, just, around 3% a year is what you would typically adjust for. If you took that over the last 15 years and used that calculation, you could adjust salary to about $21,000 for the mayor, and then about $15,000 for council members. But whatever your method is, whatever number is, this board would need to tell us what you're comfortable with, and we would just plug that in.
So,
Or if there's some other different thought process behind the adjustment, you all could make that as well.
I think that was the best approach they've taken to come up with the numbers here. And my question, the only question, and besides the numbers, is there anything or any kind of element we can put into this to kind of lock in an evaluation every 4 years to correspond with the election?
I'm gonna be honest with you, I think putting it in, I think it should be, if we're gonna do salary adjustments, I think an annual, whatever adjustment is given for city employees should probably be there, or cost of living adjustment, or whatever that is. Because you run into a situation where, say for instance, you have a council who says, well, we don't want to do any salary adjustments. And so you end up with a 15-year window where there's no salary adjustments. So either it needs to be an agreed upon annual increase, or something that doesn't necessarily produce, this type of budget item, when we get to budget. And we have to come up with a number, because now we're going to have multiple different ideas on what this number should be. And Tasha just gave us what a 3% annual would have put us at, and we could have avoided that if that was just in place.
That's a good point. I have a follow-up to that for staff. The cities that you drew this information from, do y'all happen to know what their policies are on this? Do they have a regular increase? Do they have just to look at this when it comes up? Or do you have the answer to that question?
I don't have a specific answer for that question. So I think it varies from what we got when we gathered the information. I think it varies from each jurisdiction.
Okay.
I think some cities look at it as they are gearing up for elections.
Mm-hmm.
I think that other cities may look at it on an annual basis. I think it just depends on each organization.
With the councils, Councilman Holmes, with the councils changing from time to time, I understand your point. I think it makes some good business sense, but I don't know if that's how do I word this? I don't know that it's the spirit of the elected board. So I think that in
No, I get 100% what you're saying, but I also look at the fact that we are city employee, the council of city employees, just like everyone else.
Right.
And so differentiating that, it's just, for me, it makes it easier from a calculation standpoint.
Yeah.
To just go, we're city employees. Every time we make an adjustment in the budget for city salaries,
Okay.
trust me, it is not it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other, and it doesn't really matter to me. But if we want to make this easier, It would just be easier to.
From an
to-
administrative
From an administrative standpoint,
Yeah.
to be able to have this calculate, and you guys could weigh in on that if you share that sentiment or.
Well, Chairman Moore, I think to the example that Councilman Holmes gives, the COLA is not a given. I recall when we discussed the budget, for example, back in 2020, and we had that $7 million shortfall.
Yep.
The COLA was out there to say, hey, council, do you want to approve the
Yeah,
COLA?
certainly.
And so I think what happens is the COLA comes as staff sort of gives it as a recommended every year, like, hey, do you want to still move forward with your COLA for staff? I think every year, council has a prerogative to say, we don't want to do a cost of living
Without question.
adjustment, but council doesn't do that, right? Like, we choose to do that. I think to your point, Councilman Holmes, and the point that Chairman Moore is making, the COLA is not a given, like, councils for the next 10 years don't have to do a COLA, right?
Right.
But the little difference there is that staff does include it when they bring us, the very first budget book we get says, hey, here's what we're thinking in terms of the budget, and it includes COLA. And so,
So let me just clarify some language that we're using. The city rarely does cost of living increases as part of our budget. What we typically have in our budget on an annual basis is pay for performance or merit increases for employees that is based on their performance reviews. What we do is we do a pay and class study, and we study a third of our positions every year. So every year, we use an outside consultant to look at a third of our positions, and then based on those recommendations, we make adjustments, and those are actually done throughout the year. Like, we'll do another one. Those results typically come in the fall, so by October is when we're making those salary adjustments. We did a cost of living increase in 2021 or 2?
2022,
2022.
during the fiscal year.
During the fiscal year, just because we were having some significant challenges with maintaining our staff because our salaries weren't keeping pace with how fast the market was changing. But that was fairly rare for the city of High Point. Typically, the model has been, we have the pay for performance increases that are merits that go in. And then we do the salary studies where we look at a third of our positions in groups every year. So every 3 years, we're going through a cycle of looking at the compensation structure for employees.
keeping that in mind, and Manager Ford, I appreciate you giving that insight. What I was actually going to lean on is, if you look at this and you start saying, how could this be looked at year over year or term over term or whatever it is, it stands to reason that as you get to near of each term, the same way folks go and look at the market rate for various positions, I think that having that done potentially each term could be useful. And it could just be that, and granted, I don't know how you ensure that every council at the end of their term at least looks at it. You don't have to, but it can at least be known that, I mean, in my mind, that would be the only thing that would be worth considering, especially given that the COLA isn't proposed every year. So the 3% adjustment, I don't know if that should be proposed every year for city council. However, ensuring that it is somewhat commensurate with what you see in terms of other sort of what's in the market, so to speak, right? I could see that being useful, but then how that becomes something that folks look at the end of each term would just have to be figured out. But I think the point I was getting to Chairman Moore and Michael, Councilman Holmes, is even with the adjustments, 3%, there is no given to lock that in. It's always the prerogative of council to decide to do that. But I could see it being valuable to do that look back every so often.
But in the future, if hypothetical, if the COLA comes into play again in 3 years, then is it an automatic, would the sitting council at that time have the prerogative to give the COLA to the city staff and not themselves?
I think so.
Or are they rolled into one?
I think it's council's prerogative, and just speaking plainly, I think it's council's prerogative every year to say, you know, we could vote next year to say council gets paid $0.
Yeah.
You know?
Is that good with legal?
It has to only be, any increase to the salary of council has to only be done through the annual budget. So if the timing lined up such that the increase was during with the passage of the annual budget, then it could be. But it couldn't be done at an off time during the year.
And
Yeah.
that could be managed in a way where if it is a year where a cost of living has been provided for employees, and it is for some reason we have to make that adjustment in the middle of the year, then when we do the budget for the next fiscal year, should the council decide to do that, then you would implement it at that point, because you're already in the middle of a budget year. So council would not be eligible to make an adjustment to that until you get to the budget year for the next,
Right.
The next
year.
budget adoption.
next budget adoption. Thank
You know
you.
what this it reminds me of when we had the water increase a couple years ago for the contractors for their water connections and all that, and it was a fairly substantial increase because we hadn't increased it in like 20 years. So I got a feeling this will come over as that. But I don't have a problem with the obvious fact that we're far under, where others are, and that, as Councilman Williams said, cost of doing business has continued to rise for everyone. So if someone would like to, we feel like we've got all the legal pieces together. Anybody got any questions on how it may look if you're not sitting up here for the future going forward? And I'm sure any council can change it. But I'll entertain a motion if someone has one.
I think if we can just go ahead and make a motion to give them a number. And I would say, if we're talking about cost of business now, I think the average of the other cities will be something that's more applicable than just what we've missed or the changes that hasn't happened since '08.
So you like that idea better than the 3% a year dating back?
I do.
Because, I mean, the numbers are close.
Yes, it's still close, but still, I think that's fair. And so if I'm going to give exact numbers, if that's what we're going to do, I'll read what we have here. I'll make the motion that we move with the average of the city's evaluations, that would have the mayor at $26,649, and for the members of council, $20,307.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
Just maybe not discussion, but I think we should really, to keep pace, I don't know if we can have this as, part of the budget discussion every year, put a asterisk or something in the budget for every year or whatever it may be, just to make sure that we don't have a 15-year lull of having to make this adjustment. Because let's be honest, guys, if this, when people see that, we're gonna move this much, it's gonna, the question is gonna be, oh, they're giving themselves a raise. They're not gonna care that it's been 15 years since that's happened.
So that's what I was saying about the
And
water.
so I mean, I don't mind defending it, but I'm just saying to avoid these things for future councils and having to justify all the work that we do here on a daily basis, we probably should find some type of mechanism to make sure that we keep pace without having to make these big adjustments.
Yeah.
I don't know what that looks like. You guys can come up with that idea, but let's not drop this type of thing on future councils.
I would agree,
I agree
100%. I mean, we can, with the argument now, we can justify why it's needed and why it's being done. But I agree with Councilman Holmes that to make sure that we're with everybody else in comparison, then we do need to do it more often than the way we're doing it,
Well, and keep
or the way
in
it's
mind,
been done.
we're not going, we're not going to the top and
Right.
Yeah.
we're going into the average. So.
Yeah.
All right, there's a motion and a second on the floor. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That motion passes.
And is there a pleasure of the board regarding the May 24th budget work session as to whether or not that's needed?
I make a motion, if there's no further questions, concerns of this council, that we remove that from our agenda. I think we're ready to move forward with the budget. Does that need to be done in a vote, Madam Attorney, or it does?
Sure.
Okay. I make a motion to remove the May 24th budget review session from our calendars.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Before we move to the next item, I want to tell everybody, and I've done it, and I'll do it again, you guys do a yeoman's job. The budgets,
Yes, sir.
each and every year
Yes, sir.
is a bear.
Yes.
And it takes months and months and months for y'all to put it together. And we do appreciate it more than you know. And I think I speak for a large amount of our citizens that even though they don't know it's close up, that they know it's a lot of work. So thank y'all for all you do.
Chairman Moore, before you move forward, one, I had a hard out at 5:15. I'm sorry, I do have to go. But before I do, I want to thank you all on this dais for your support with the allocated funds for High Point Partners and the mentorship position. That's a huge generational investment in our kids.
Yes.
I'll just leave it at that, but just know that I fully believe we have a great return on that in the future.
We appreciate all of your work and Mayor Wagner's work on that. Y'all been hitting on that for a long time.
Thank you. Y'all have a great day.
Okay, I'm gonna need a motion for us to go into closed session for another item about attorney-client privilege.
Motion to go into closed session?
Second.
There's a motion and a second to go into closed session. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We will now go into closed session.